Hello, girls and guys. I'm Lena Pfau, and if you think this story is about a dog, you're already wrong. It's about Sophie, a welcome mat, and a woman named Lou who says she doesn't do serious while doing everything but. Let's get into it.
I was barefoot, still half asleep, when I opened the front door that morning. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the wet grass coming in from the yard. And that's when I saw Biscuit, stretched out across my welcome mat, completely at ease, taking up the space like he'd always owned it. His body was too large for that threshold, paws splayed, nose resting sideways against the mat. Fast asleep, relaxed. He didn't look lost. He looked decided. I stood there for a few seconds, not sure what to do. It wasn't the first time he'd wandered across the yard, but he'd never come this far. Never chosen to stay. Then I heard the latch on the fence gate. I already knew who it was. Lou appeared with that walk that's too light for someone carrying so much underneath. Hair thrown up in a loose bun, oversized flannel shirt, slow, easy smile. She looked at Biscuit, then at me. She didn't rush. Didn't apologize. Just smiled, like the scene confirmed something she'd been quietly thinking for a while. "He likes comfortable places," she said, leaning a shoulder against the fence post. The silence between us stretched. Biscuit didn't move. The air felt warmer than it had a minute before. Lou took a few slow steps toward me, stopped closer than she needed to. The scent of her reached me first, something clean and warm, dangerously familiar for someone I barely knew. She glanced at the dog again, and then back at me. Her smile shifted, slowed, became deliberate, almost a dare. "Can I sleep there too?" It didn't come out like a joke, not like a cheap line either. It landed with the ease of someone who tests limits because she doesn't know how to live without them. My chest responded before my brain did. Heart picking up pace, throat going dry. Before I managed any kind of answer, Lou laughed, called Biscuit, and turned to walk away, like someone who lights a match and strolls off without looking back. In that moment, I still didn't know that dog hadn't just chosen a welcome mat. He'd chosen a house. And that woman, the one who claimed she didn't want anything serious, had just quietly rearranged everything I thought I knew about agreements, distance, and control. Before we go further, if this story is already pulling at you, hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And drop a comment. Have you ever had someone walk into your life sideways, through a side door you didn't know you'd left open? I've always thought silence and peace were the same thing. You learn to confuse them after a while. My house in Portland was bigger than one person needed, but I'd stopped apologizing for that. I liked waking up without rushing, liked hearing only the wind moving through the Douglas firs in the backyard, the neighbors' sprinklers clicking on at 6 a.m., the particular stillness of a Sunday morning with nowhere to be. I'd organized my life the way you organize a bookshelf. Everything in its place, nothing left over. That was how I'd learned not to lose myself again. I'm Sophie, 36 years old, high school English teacher, and someone who figured out the hard way that loving carelessly leaves marks that take a long time to fade. My last relationship ended without drama. No cheating, no screaming, no doors slammed hard enough to shake the windows. Just a slow drift, almost polite. One day I looked up and realized I'd been sharing a bed with someone who'd already left. She just hadn't moved out yet. After that, I made myself a promise. No expectations. Keep things light. Don't ask for too much. Don't feel too much. It was a solid plan. I repeated it to myself like a mantra and mostly believed it. The neighbor moved in next door a few months after I did. Lou arrived the way weather arrives, without asking permission. Loud music at random hours. Laughter spilling out into the yard. Friends coming and going on weekday evenings. She walked around in her socks, sat on the porch floor, talked with her whole body. Everything about her felt excessive to someone like me, who measured words and gestures. I watched her from my kitchen window. I was annoyed by how much I watched. Impossible not to notice Biscuit, a big golden retriever with the kind of presence that changes a room. He'd run through Lou's yard like the world was simple. Sometimes he'd stop near the fence between our properties, study me for a few seconds with something that looked almost like assessment. I pretended not to see. Pretending was something I'd gotten very good at. Lou started appearing closer. Comments tossed over the fence. Questions she aimed at the dog but clearly meant for me. She never crossed an obvious line, which was worse. She circled, and I could feel my body responding before my rational mind had time to mount a defense. That irritated me deeply. I didn't want someone who moved through life that way. So untethered, so unafraid. I knew how to recognize risk when I saw it, and Lou was risk in its most disarming shape. Still, something in her wasn't only provocation. Sometimes, when the laughter quieted, I'd catch a different look, more careful, more watchful, like she was performing ease the same way I was performing calm. Some nights I'd hear Biscuit restless, pacing near the fence. Other nights it was too quiet. I started noticing when he wasn't there. Started noticing when Lou wasn't there. None of that made sense. I had no connection to that woman. No history. No reason. And yet, something had already been touched. I tried to reason my way out of it. Told myself it was just curiosity, that it was natural to pay attention to someone so different, that I'd been alone long enough that novelty felt like meaning. I committed to emotional distance. No involvement, no interpretation, no expectations. I needed control. I'd always needed it. That morning I woke up early the way I always do. Made coffee. Opened the windows. The yard was still damp from the night's rain. I walked to the front door without shoes, thinking about absolutely nothing, and felt it before I saw it. A different weight on the other side. A presence. When I opened the door, Biscuit was asleep on my welcome mat. And in that instant, I knew that everything I'd been carefully keeping in order was about to come apart. Lou didn't take Biscuit home that day. She said she needed to answer one urgent email, then another, then laughed at herself for still being there. I pretended to believe her. I made a second pot of coffee. We sat on the back porch together, side by side, watching Biscuit stretch in the morning sun like he'd won some private contest. The conversation stayed deliberately surface level for what was happening underneath it. Loose observations, small jokes, silences that lasted 1 second too long. Lou talked with her hands, with her whole body. When she turned toward me, she was always slightly closer than necessary. When she laughed, she tipped her head in a way that caught me completely off guard. At some point, the words ran out. I don't remember exactly when. What I know is that the quiet that followed wasn't empty. It had weight, intention. She looked at me differently. Not the way a neighbor looks at you. Not like a long-distance provocation. There was something present in it. Something that stayed. I felt it first in my stomach, then in my chest. I didn't pull back. I didn't move forward. I just stayed, and that seemed to be answer enough. Lou leaned in slowly, like she was offering me time to change my mind. I didn't. When she kissed me, it was quiet and certain, and absolutely nothing like I'd prepared myself for. No rush, no performance. A firm, warm kiss that started careful and ended decided. My hands found their way to her waist without me noticing when I'd put them there. The rest of the world shrank to the distance between us. When we pulled apart, we stayed quiet for a moment. Her expression had changed. Less playful. More serious. Like she'd crossed a line she usually stayed behind. This, she started, then stopped. I know, I answered, even though I didn't exactly. She exhaled, ran a hand through her hair, smiled again. But the smile didn't cover as much as it used to. "I'm not great at staying in things," she said with a kind of honesty that was almost uncomfortable. "Normally I just go." That didn't land as rejection. It landed as warning. "I'm not great at making promises either," I replied, "particularly when I don't know what ground I'm standing on." Lou nodded, looked at Biscuit, then at the house, then at me. "Maybe we just feel it," she said, without trying to name anything right now. There was no agreement, no rule, just a quiet attempt not to scare off whatever had just started breathing between us. Later, when she finally went home, Biscuit stayed. He slept in the same spot he'd claimed that morning. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't try to sort through what I was feeling before I went to sleep. That night, the memory of that kiss came back complete, and I knew that the next day, nothing would be simple. I woke up before my alarm with the uneasy feeling that something had shifted while I was sleeping. The house was too quiet. Light cut through the curtain slats and fell across the living room floor where Biscuit slept stretched out, deeply still. That image should have been calming. It wasn't. It felt like a reminder of something I hadn't decided how to handle. I made coffee on autopilot. The smell spread through the kitchen but didn't bring its usual comfort. My body still held the memory of the night before, not as something vague, but as something physical. A quiet warmth just under the skin, an awareness that wouldn't switch off. I told myself it was just attraction, just something I knew how to manage. Then I heard the side gate. Lou appeared with slow steps, like someone who isn't sure if she should be walking through this door. Hair caught up carelessly, face still soft from sleep. She was different, less light, more present. She paused when she saw Biscuit, smiled sideways, and then looked at me, reading my silence. "Good morning," she said, with more care than I expected from someone usually this effortless. "Morning," I said. We stood there, the space between us bigger than it physically was. The kiss from the night before hung in the air, invisible and heavy. Neither of us pretended it hadn't happened. Neither of us hurried to explain it. Lou was the one who broke the quiet. "I was thinking," she began, then took a breath. "I'm not very good at pretending nothing happened." That hit somewhere unexpected. "Me neither," I said. "But I'm good at trying to organize things afterward." She laughed once, without humor. That's usually where I run. We sat down at the kitchen table. Biscuit settled between our chairs, as if he'd decided to participate. Lou talked about her past without going into detail. Said she'd gotten too far in before, trusted too much, stayed too long somewhere she wasn't being chosen. I talked about my fear of expectations, the feeling of having lived half a relationship by myself. No drama in it, just recognition. "I can't promise consistency," Lou said, looking straight at me. "But I can promise honesty." "I can't promise lightness," I replied, "but I can promise I'll respect your limits." The silence after that wasn't tense. It was dense, full of something being decided. "Maybe we don't need a label," she said finally. "At least not now, not anytime soon." "Maybe," I agreed. "As long as honesty stays on the table." She nodded. Then she leaned in, slow, asking without words. When she kissed me again, there was no surprise in it. Only confirmation. Quieter than the first time. More grounded. Like our bodies had understood something our conversation was still trying to catch up to. When she rested her forehead against mine, the warmth between us said everything the words hadn't. "This isn't light," she murmured. "No," I answered. "But it can be honest." We spent the rest of the morning together in a kind of intimacy that didn't ask for definition. We talked, we laughed, We kept finding our way back to each other the way you do when something is real. When Lou finally left, she took with her the ease she'd been pretending she didn't need, and left behind a house that already felt different. That afternoon at school, a colleague named Mara stopped by my classroom after the last bell. She was warm, perceptive, attentive in a way I'd noticed for months without letting myself fully register. For the first time, I considered what it might mean to turn toward that kind of steady attention. Not because I didn't feel what I felt for Lou, but because I was afraid of what it might cost me. When I got home, Biscuit wasn't there. And that specific absence told me, clearly, that even without a label, something had already started asking for a choice. Lou came back at the end of the afternoon like nothing had changed, and like everything had. She arrived with Biscuit out in front, cutting across the yard without asking, straight into my house. She hung back at the gate for a moment, watching with that smile that mixed ease and calculation. The same smile she always had. Except now I knew what was behind it. "He missed someone," she said, dropping her bag by the door. I didn't ask who. That's how it became. No notice. No real planning. Sometimes she'd come just to get Biscuit and end up staying. Sometimes she'd arrive with every intention of staying and leave early. There were evenings when we'd sit on the porch until past midnight, talking and not talking, our laughter getting quieter as the hour got later. And there were others when Lou would stand, say she had to go, and be out the door before anything more could settle. I let it happen. That's what I told myself. At school, Mara was taking up more space. Not in an overwhelming way. She wasn't like that. She was thoughtful, deliberate with words, genuinely curious. She'd mention books I'd brought up in class, wait for me by the parking lot, ask questions with real interest behind them. I felt the contrast. Mara was stability, Lou was risk, and for the first time, I was consciously weighing both. I told Lou about Mara one ordinary evening, sitting on the back porch, Biscuit stretched between us. I kept it casual, the way you'd share a piece of news. Said she'd been showing interest for months, that I was thinking about getting coffee with her. Lou's response came out too light. "You should," she said. "You deserve someone available." The word sat there in the air. She leaned down to scratch Biscuit's ears, avoiding my eyes, then added, with the tone of someone deciding something impulsively to avoid feeling it, "We could even all hang out sometime. The three of us. The park, maybe. Biscuit loves it." That didn't sound natural. It sounded like a test. I agreed. Not because I wanted to. Because I wanted to see how far that lightness went. The days that followed were strange. Lou became more present and more distant at the same time. More intense when she was close, faster to leave. Almost conspicuously careful not to seem possessive. I felt something shifting inside me, a restlessness that couldn't find a comfortable place. On Friday night, Lou showed up late. She smelled like the outside, like a long evening somewhere else. I didn't ask where she'd been. She didn't explain. Biscuit came in first, ran straight to me, pressed his head against my leg. Lou watched from across the room. "He's been choosing," she said offhand. "He always has," I answered without thinking. She looked at me. The smile faltered for just a second. Then she crossed the room and kissed me with an urgency that caught me off guard, as if she needed to erase that sentence before it stuck. The kiss was warm and close and slightly desperate, coming from someone who kept insisting she was fine. When we pulled apart, there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. The specific fear of someone who's realized they've started caring. "We said no pressure," she said quietly, more to herself than to me. "We did," I agreed, but her body didn't believe it anymore. Neither did mine. On Sunday, I woke up to a text from Mara asking if I wanted to grab coffee. I read it twice before I replied. Biscuit slept beside me, unbothered. I thought about Lou. I thought about the park. I thought about how clean and simple everything had looked before it stopped being simple. I said yes to Mara, and in that moment, even without knowing how yet, I understood that I was running, not from Lou, but from myself. Saying yes to Mara wasn't an impulse. It was a deliberate attempt at self-protection. A choice to reach for something predictable before the unpredictable could reach me first. Mara was everything Lou didn't promise to be. Steady, attentive, available. Maybe that was what drew me that day. Not longing, but the shape of safety. Coffee was easy. Too easy, maybe. Mara talked about a road trip she'd been planning. A novel she'd read twice because it reminded her of something I'd said in class. There was real care in every gesture. She listened the way you do when you actually intend to stay. I felt seen, but not lit up. And the gap between those two things bothered me more than it should have. When she leaned in and kissed me, I wasn't surprised. I let it happen. I kissed her back. It was soft and careful and correct in every technical way. And yet something in me stayed very still. My body didn't follow. I was already somewhere else in my head. I knew, with a clarity I didn't particularly want, that I was trying to press a feeling into a space where there wasn't one. Mara knew. She didn't make it awkward. She just rested her forehead against mine for a moment and smiled quietly. "We can go slow," she said. I nodded, but inside, it wasn't about speed. It was about direction. When I got home, Biscuit was waiting by the side gate, unsettled. He stood when he saw me, but didn't run over the way he usually did. Just watched me, very attentive. Lou hadn't come by. The backyard felt large for that time of day. She came over later, like someone who'd been thinking for a long time before arriving. We sat on the porch and talked about small things. The heat, a show she'd been half watching, nothing. Until the quiet started to weigh something. I told her, no drama in it. No asking for permission. I just said I'd had coffee with Mara, that there had been a kiss, that I'd wanted to understand something. Lou didn't stop moving her hand over Biscuit's back. Kept going, like I'd only shared a detail from my day. "Was it good?" she asked, voice carefully flat. I paused. 1 second. "It was correct," I said. She smiled quickly. A practiced smile. "Then we're still inside what we agreed," she said. "We were honest from the start." I nodded. Because it was true, at least on the surface. Lou got up to get water from the kitchen. She took longer than she needed to. When she came back, she'd recomposed herself. Light, easy, provocative again. "I'm glad for you," she said. Honestly. But Biscuit stood and walked over to me, pressed himself against my leg like he was picking a side. Lou saw it, and for the first time since I'd known her, she didn't make a joke of it. She came close and kissed me, not softly, with intention, like she needed to confirm something without putting it into words. When we pulled apart, she pressed her forehead to mine, just briefly. The kind of brief that's never actually brief. "We're good," she said, more as declaration than question. "We are," I answered, but something had moved. Lou left earlier than usual that night. Said she had things to handle. Didn't say what. Biscuit walked her to the gate and stopped. Came back, lay down beside me. Sitting in the dark yard, I understood. Telling her about the kiss hadn't pushed Lou away. It had made losing her feel real. And nothing scares you quite like realizing you've already started caring too much to pretend otherwise. The park idea came from Lou, offered up with too much casual energy to be casual. She said it like someone suggesting a Sunday afternoon walk. The three of us. Sun. Biscuit off-leash. An adult arrangement. something managed. I agreed without pushing back, maybe from curiosity, maybe from exhaustion at pretending none of this was affecting me. I arrived first, found a bench near some trees, enough shade to watch without being too visible. Mara came shortly after, open smile, easy presence, entirely unaware she was walking into a test she hadn't been told about. We made small talk while we waited. I kept telling myself this was maturity, that adults handle discomfort without theatrics. Lou arrived with Biscuit pulling at the leash, sunglasses on, light dress, occupying the space the way she always did. She greeted Mara with a warmth that was just slightly too smooth, held my hand for 1 second too long when she said hello, a small gesture, almost invisible. Biscuit, freed, ran directly to me, sat at my feet like he'd reserved that spot in advance. He's a creature of habit, Lou said, laughing, or just partial to predictable people. Mara tried to coax him over. He relocated politely, then drifted right back to me. This happened a few too many times to be coincidence. Lou pretended not to notice, but her body told a different story. Arms crossed, one unnecessary adjustment of her sunglasses, smiles getting shorter. We walked. We talked. Mara spoke with an openness that was a little disarming, about wanting to build something slowly, about being present. Lou listened with exaggerated attentiveness, asking questions that seemed curious in the wrong direction for someone who claimed not to care about labels. At some point, Mara reached for my hand, crossing a crowded stretch of path. Simple gesture. I didn't pull away. Lou saw it. Biscuit barked once, short, dry, out of nowhere. The kind of sound that breaks a moment. The quiet after it landed precisely. Lou said she was going to find the water station. She was gone longer than the walk warranted. When she came back, she was quieter, less sharp. She sat beside me, closer than the bench required. "We're okay, right?" she said, looking straight ahead. "We are," I said, knowing the question was about something else. The afternoon ended with polite goodbyes and a discomfort nobody named. Mara left gracefully. Lou stayed still, Biscuit beside her, restless. "I thought I'd handle this better," Lou said, finally, not looking at me. "It's not about her. It's about me." I didn't say anything. Sometimes the truth doesn't need a comment. We walked home. In the house, she kissed me the way you kiss someone when you're trying to confirm something before it slips away. Close. Present. When she pulled back, she was breathing differently. "Doesn't change the agreement," she said, trying for light. "I know," I said. But Biscuit lay down between us, deliberate, like he was marking a new boundary. And I understood, with a calm that also frightened me. The agreement was still in place. Our control was not. That night, Lou stayed. She didn't make a joke of it. She didn't leave. And for the first time, I couldn't tell if that was progress, or the beginning of something that was going to require choices neither of us had been willing to name. The retreat wasn't something we talked about. It happened the way these things happen when nobody has the nerve to say stop. Lou started showing up less. She didn't disappear. That would have been cleaner to understand. She just reduced. Texts shorter. Visits faster. Kisses that ended before they deepened. Like she was trying to prove, to herself mostly, that she still had a handle on things. I matched her. Stopped inviting her to stay. Said yes to plans with Mara that I knew weren't going anywhere. Biscuit felt it before either of us admitted it. He started pacing between the 2 yards, lying down in places that didn't suit him, like a body failing to find its coordinates. He was narrating something we refused to say out loud. One unusually quiet night, I realized. I wasn't missing Lou's presence. I was afraid of what her absence meant. That was different. That wasn't attachment from loneliness. That was a choice I'd been putting off. Lou came over 2 days later, unannounced. Without Biscuit, she stood in the middle of my living room like someone who didn't know where to put herself. The air between us was loaded with everything we hadn't said. "I'm pulling back because I'm scared," she said, before I could ask anything. No setup, no deflection. "Scared of what?" I asked, even though I knew. "Of staying," she said. "Of caring more than I can hold. Of promising things I don't know how to keep. I've always been good at leaving first." I breathed in, felt the weight of what I'd also been avoiding. "I'm scared too," I said. "But mine is that I'll spend my whole life choosing what doesn't shake me." Lou looked at me the way people look when you've touched exactly where it hurts. She came a step closer. Stopped. She didn't reach for me. "We turned lightness into armor," she said. "And now the armor's too heavy." I nodded. The quiet between us wasn't asking for a kiss. It was asking for truth. "I don't want to corner you," she continued, "but I also can't keep pretending this is casual." "Then stop pretending," I said, "even if it's just for tonight." She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was decision there. Not resolution, decision. The kiss came after, slower than the others, deeper, not urgent, not defensive. It was the kind of kiss that doesn't try to erase the fear. It moves through it. My hands found her face, gently. When we separated, we stayed close, foreheads nearly touching, the space between us finally honest. "I don't know how this ends," she whispered. "Me neither," I said. "But I know how it starts when we stop running." Lou stayed that night, slept restlessly, left early in the morning. No joke on the way out, no performance. Biscuit turned up a few hours later and lay down in the exact space she'd left empty. The retreat hadn't been a break. It had been a rehearsal. And the fear, now named, couldn't be managed back into silence. The house woke up strangely hollow that morning. Not from the quiet. I knew quiet. It was the particular absence of weight, of breathing scattered across the floor. I called Biscuit's name once, half distracted. Then again, with more attention. I checked the yard, opened the gate, looked down the street. Nothing. The knot in my chest formed immediately, and it was disproportionate and real. I called Lou without thinking it through. She picked up faster than someone who claims not to like urgency. "He hasn't come back?" she said, before I'd finished explaining. "No. We didn't make a plan." Minutes later, she was at my door. No jokes, no irony. Sneakers barely tied, face tense. The ease she'd worn like a coat had been left at home. We checked the obvious places first, the street behind the house, the small park at the corner. We called his name in voices that tried to sound calm. They didn't. Lou moved fast, scanning ahead. I watched every shadow, every half-open gate. Time stretched. "He never disappears like this," Lou said, more to herself. "He's been unsettled," I said. "Like us." She looked at me, quick, sharp, like she hadn't asked for that particular mirror. We headed to the bigger park, the one from that uncomfortable afternoon with Mara. Sun was high, families everywhere, bikes cutting through. We asked around. Nobody had seen a big, restless golden running loose. The feeling of loss grew, concrete and physical. Lou stopped at one point, hands on her knees, breathing deliberately. "I hate it when something I love gets away from me," she said, and her voice cracked for the first time since I'd known her. I moved without thinking. Put my hand on her arm. It wasn't a rehearsed comfort. It was need. "Then stop letting things get away," I said quietly. She lifted her face. Her eyes were damp but steady. No more running in them. Biscuit found us. He came from behind a picnic shelter, covered in dirt, tongue out, tail going like he'd just completed something important. He ran straight to us, like he'd known exactly where the finish line was. Lou dropped to her knees immediately, arms around him, holding on harder than made sense for a dog. I crouched next to her, laughing and crying in the same breath, feeling the relief flood in all at once. Biscuit shook himself free, and without ceremony, wedged himself between us, forcing a closeness that left no room for calculated distance. Lou looked at me. She didn't smile, didn't make a joke. "I don't want to keep playing at leaving," she said. "Not today." The words weren't a promise, they were presents. We walked home slowly, Biscuit out front, satisfied, like he'd accomplished something. At the house, Lou walked in without hesitating, took off her shoes, sat on the couch, pulled me in beside her. The kiss that came was quiet and certain and full of everything we'd been circling around for weeks. Not reckless, chosen. "We don't have to name it yet," she murmured, forehead to mine. "But I want to stay." I closed my eyes. Felt the good weight of someone who wasn't leaving. "Stay," I said. Biscuit climbed onto the couch and dropped himself between us, heavy, final. And in that small, disorganized moment, I understood that some choices don't happen in speeches. They happen when you stop moving. Nothing changed in some dramatic, cinematic way. There was no formal agreement, no definitive speech. The world didn't reorganize itself around our decision. The next morning came ordinary. Light through the windows, the distant sound of traffic picking up, the smell of coffee. And yet something was different. Lou was there. Not as a visitor. As a presence. She'd woken before me. I found her in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, watching Biscuit eat with a look I hadn't seen before. Quiet, unguarded. She was wearing my flannel shirt, way too big on her, and she looked completely at ease in a space that had always been only mine. I didn't feel intruded on. I felt something fit. "Good morning," she said, turning with a slow, still sleepy smile. "Morning," I said. The kiss that followed was simple. No urgency. Nothing to prove. A kiss that didn't ask what now. It just stayed. Biscuit padded over, wagging, and settled at our feet like someone recognizing a safe place. We didn't talk about labels. Didn't discuss exclusivity or terms or what we'd call this to other people. Lou said, with a steadiness I hadn't heard from her before, that she was still afraid. I told her I was too, not as obstacles, as things we had in common. We agreed on something that didn't feel like an agreement, more like a direction. Don't leave when leaving is easiest. Stay when going would be simpler. The days shaped themselves around that. Lou came more often. Sometimes she stayed over, sometimes she didn't, but she stopped arriving as performance. She'd let herself in, take off her shoes, sit on the couch. Biscuit didn't have to choose anymore. He just stayed wherever we both were. Mara stepped back with real grace. No confrontation, no excessive explanation, just enough honesty. When I thought about her, it wasn't with guilt. It was with something close to gratitude. She'd been a mirror. She showed me what safety looked like, and why it wasn't enough to be the whole truth. One night we were sitting in the backyard, late, and Lou rested her head on my shoulder without saying anything. We stayed like that, watching the sky go dark, Biscuit breathing heavily between us. There was no promise in the gesture. There was continuity, which I was beginning to understand, is rarer. "I always thought home was the place you left from," Lou said quietly. "Maybe it's just the place where you stop running." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I put my arm around her, and we stayed like that, whole in the quiet. Over time, the house stopped being only mine. Not because someone claimed it, but because someone stayed. The furniture didn't change, the walls didn't change. I changed. Lou changed. Biscuit kept doing what he'd always done, choosing without fear. That morning when everything began, I thought I'd found a dog asleep on my doorstep. Now I know better. I found a beginning. An invitation that didn't come wrapped in guarantees, only presence. Some stories don't start with promises. They start when someone stops at your door and decides to stay. And for the first time in a long time, I stayed too.
Before you go, Fran, there's a Patreon where stories like this one get to be everything they couldn't be here. More detail, more depth, more truth. Link is in the pinned comment. Come join us.